Beneath the peeling wallpaper of a forgotten Victorian house in rural Vermont, there are whispers in the walls. Not the kind you dismiss as old pipes or wind. These whispers have a voice that knows your name. This is where Emily Shaw's nightmares took root, long before she understood that monsters don't always hide under beds. Sometimes they grow inside you. The first time Emily heard the giggle, she was 7 years old, hiding beneath her quilt. It sounded like marbles rolling across the attic floor above her. Click, 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 followed by a wet, gurgling laugh. "Don't be scared, Emmy," it cooed. "We're going to play." 30 years later, she stood in the same bedroom, the air thick with mildew and rot. Her mother's funeral had dragged her back to Willow's End, a town where the pines grew too close to the houses, their skeletal branches scraping windows like fingernails. The house had been sealed since her mother's accident. A fall down the stairs, the police said. But the splintered banister and the dark stain on the hardwood told a different story. Her therapist called it dissociation, a coping mechanism, she'd said, for the trauma of your father's disappearance. But the shadow that followed Emily home from Willow's End wasn't just a memory. It had a name, Mr. Whisper, her imaginary childhood friend who'd urged her to steal her teacher's keys, to drop a lit match in the school trash can, to lie. "They deserve it," he'd hissed, his voice like static between radio stations. Now, as Emily pried open the attic door, a draft slithered out, carrying the scent of copper and soil. The flashlight beam trembled in her hand. Something skittered behind the stacks of moth-eaten boxes. A rat? No! The shadow that darted past was too tall. Too wrong. Its limbs bent like broken tree branches, and its head lolled sideways, as if its neck had been snapped. The attic was a graveyard of her past, a dollhouse with its roof caved in, a cracked music box that played a lullaby in reverse. And there, tucked beneath a moldy quilt, was her father's old camcorder. The battery, impossibly, still held a charge. The footage was grainy, shaky. Her mother, young and trembling, backing away from the camera. "Please, Daniel, put it down." A man's laughter cut her off. The screen went black, then flickered to a close-up of her face. Emily's own face, age 7, staring dead-eyed into the lens. "You let him hurt her," her child self whispered. "But I didn't." That night, Emily woke to the sound of something dragging itself up the stairs. Thump, scrape, hump. The hallway light buzzed, flickering like a strobe. In the flashes, she saw it. A figure crawling on all fours, its spine jutting through its shirt, its head twisting 180 degrees to smile at her with her father's teeth. Mr. Whisper sat at the foot of her bed now, solid as flesh. His face shifted, a child's freckles melting into her father's stubble, eyes pooling black. "You remember," he crooned, "the night he made you watch." And she did. Flashes, her father's hands around her mother's throat, the way he turned to Emily, bloody and grinning. "Our secret, okay, kiddo." But she'd locked it away, let it fester into something that wore her skin, talked in her voice. The police found Emily at dawn, standing in the kitchen with a knife. Her mother's body lay exhumed in the backyard, half-eaten by roots. But it wasn't Emily they arrested. It was the man cowering in the attic. Her father, aged and deranged, surviving on rats and rainwater. "She's here," he screamed, pointing at Emily. "The girl, the one who watches." The camcorder footage went viral. True crime bloggers froze it on that final frame. 7-year-old Emily, smirking as her mother fell. "I didn't push her," adult Emily whispered to the empty interrogation room. Mr. Whisper leaned over her shoulder, his breath reeking of grave dirt. "We did." Emily returned to the house one last time. In the attic, she found the dollhouse repaired, its tiny occupants arranged in a tableau. A man with a broken neck, a woman in a bloody nightgown, and a little girl holding hands with a shadow. That night, the townsfolk heard laughter echoing from the woods. Two voices, one young, one old, and deep in the pines, where the ground is soft, something began to dig. It started on a rainy Tuesday evening in Silver Lake. The fog curled through empty streets like phantom fingers, obscuring the street lamps and casting everything in a shadowy blur. Detective Alex Harper had investigated hundreds of cases, but nothing had prepared him for this one. 5 disappearances in 3 weeks, all disturbingly similar. It felt calculated, personal. Alex knelt beside the empty sedan, parked outside the victim's apartment, windshield wipers still squeaking against dry glass, as if left running in panic. No sign of struggle, no forced entry, just emptiness and the unsettling feeling of eyes watching from the dark. He flipped through notes under the dim porch light, the paper damp from drizzle. All victims were young professionals with seemingly ordinary lives, yet they'd vanished as though plucked from existence by an invisible hand. That was when the whispers began. Alex turned sharply at the sound. "Hello?" He called into the gloom. The street remained silent. The only reply a distant hum from power lines overhead. 2 days later, Alex received a tip leading him to James Carter, an unassuming accountant who lived alone in a small suburban home. Neighbors described him as quiet, gentle, a little odd. Nothing unusual, except for the frequent blackouts reported by his coworkers. James seemed jittery, eyes darting anxiously around during questioning, sweat beading on his forehead. Alex's instinct screamed suspicion. Yet something felt off. James' fear was genuine, but was he scared of being caught? Or something else? Late that night, Alex sat alone in his office, poring over James' psychiatric evaluations. Dissociative identity disorder. Alternate personalities. The words jumped off the page. He felt a chill run down his spine as the lights in his office flickered once, twice, then died entirely. In the silence, the whispers returned. Low, unintelligible murmurs slithering beneath the walls, seeping from shadows. Alex pulled his gun, stepping slowly into the hallway. He could barely see, the air heavy with static electricity. Footsteps echoed quietly behind him. Yet when he turned, nothing. Only empty darkness. Then a phone rang, shrill and sudden, shattering the oppressive silence. Alex answered, pulse racing. Static hissed from the receiver, followed by a distorted voice. "He's coming for you next." The line clicked dead. Breathing ragged, Alex stormed from the station to confront James again. But upon arrival at James' home, the front door creaked open at his touch. The inside was pitch black. He flicked his flashlight across the living room, revealing chaos. Overturned furniture, torn photographs, walls covered with frantic scribbles and strange symbols. A whispering laugh echoed faintly from upstairs, mocking him. Gun raised, Alex climbed the stairs slowly, wood creaking beneath his feet. At the hallway's end stood a room with a cracked door. Pale moonlight spilled through, outlining a figure hunched silently on the floor. "James?" Alex called softly. The figure's head jerked sharply upward, eyes wild, lips trembling. "Please, run," James whispered hoarsely. "Hey, he's awake. I can't control him." Before Alex could respond, James' body stiffened abruptly, his posture shifting, becoming unnaturally rigid. A terrifyingly calm voice spoke from his lips, colder, deeper, utterly inhuman. "Detective Harper?" The voice purred. "I've been waiting." Alex's blood froze. He watched in horror as James straightened, face shifting grotesquely from terror to serene amusement. "I'm not James," the voice whispered, eyes glinting cruelly. "But I think you already know that." Alex backed toward the door, heart slamming in his chest. But the door slammed violently shut behind him. The sound echoed through the house, followed by distant, chilling laughter. "You can't run, detective. I'm already everywhere." He blinked. And James, or whatever had taken control, was suddenly inches away, face twisted into a nightmarish grin. A hand shot out, gripping Alex's wrist painfully tight. "Look into my eyes," the voice hissed. "Do you recognize me?" Suddenly, Alex saw memories flooding his mind. Images from case files, victims' terrified expressions. Every missing person stared back at him, mouths open in silent screams, begging for help, had never been able to provide. He jerked free, stumbling backward, colliding with furniture, heart hammering as laughter filled the room. A cold, hollow sound, echoing into the night. James slumped to the ground, unconscious once more, desperate for answers. Alex spent days locked away, obsessively piecing together clues. The disappearances formed a pattern, each victim connected to the same psychiatric hospital where James had been treated years before. A dark history of unethical experiments, violent patient outbreaks, and unexplained deaths lurked within its walls. Heart pounding, Alex returned to the long-abandoned psychiatric hospital. Walls crumbled, and black mold climbed cracked tiles. A distant guttural whisper echoed from darkened corridors. Shadows flickered at the corners of his vision, whispers echoing through empty halls. He found patient files, names matching the vanished victims. Each had reported nightmares, hallucinations, claims of shadowy figures following them before their disappearances. The hospital records listed the same doctor, Dr. Leonard Grayson, terminated for inhumane practices. Alex turned a corner, flashlight flickering weakly, revealing a rusted metal door labeled Treatment Room. See inside. Yellow documents scattered the floor. Alex's heart hammered violently, his breath quickening as he found his own photograph pinned to the wall. Marked with a red X from the darkness behind him came a familiar voice. "Welcome, Detective." Alex spun around, pulse hammering. Dr. Grayson stepped from the shadows, his face gaunt, eyes sunken with madness. "You've found me," Grayson said softly, "but you're too late. James was just a puppet, one of many. I planted seeds in their minds long ago. Seeds that grew into beautiful horrors." Suddenly, echoing screams filled the room. Shadows twisted, coalescing into hideous, tortured faces pressing against the walls. Mouths stretched open in silent agony. Alex stumbled backward, fear clawing at his chest. You killed them." "Oh no," Grayson whispered. "I simply freed them. I gave them purpose. James was weak, but he served well. Now your turn." Grayson lunged forward, his mouth stretching impossibly wide, eyes blackening entirely. Alex fired twice, bullets tearing through empty air as Grayson's form dissolved into darkness, echoing laughter filling the halls. Heart hammering. Alex stumbled toward the exit, feeling the hospital twisting around him. Walls shifted, corridors looped endlessly, trapping him inside a living nightmare. Echoes of screams and tortured cries reverberated from all sides. Exhausted and disoriented, Alex burst through a door, only to find himself standing back in James Carter's house, upstairs bedroom, the suspect calmly sitting in a chair, eyes gentle and confused. "Detective, what happened?" James asked innocently. Alex's blood ran cold. Behind James, the cracked mirror reflected something else. A dark shadow with Dr. Grayson's twisted grin looming menacingly behind them both. "You never left, Detective," the shadow whispered. "You've been mine from the beginning." As darkness swallowed the room, Alex heard the door creak shut, locking him inside forever. With James, Grayson, and the endless echoing laughter of the faces he could no longer see, but knew were there, waiting silently for him in the dark. Have you ever walked into a house and just felt wrong? Not a crack in the wall or peeling paint, but a deep, unsettling feeling that chills you to the bone. That's exactly what the Harrison family felt when they moved into their new home on the outskirts of the quiet town of Silent Creek. They'd snagged it for a steal, a ridiculously low price in this market. Maybe, just maybe, they got that deal for a reason darker than they could ever imagine. The Harrison family, John, Mary, and their 16-year-old daughter, Emily, were escaping the cramped city apartment for the peace and space of the countryside. The old two-story colonial was quaint and charming from the outside, with a sprawling yard and ancient oaks looming around it. Inside, though it needed some work, the house retained a classic beauty: creaky hardwood floors, a grand fireplace, and stained glass windows. The first day after moving in, Emily, exploring the musty basement, stumbled upon an old wooden box tucked behind a stack of cardboard cartons. Inside lay a worn leather journal and a porcelain doll with cold, glassy eyes that seemed to stare right through her. Emily, a naturally curious and inquisitive teenager, loved uncovering mysteries. She carried the box to her room and began to read the journal. The handwriting was scratchy, the ink faded with time, but the words slowly unraveled a terrifying tale. The journal belonged to Arthur Reeves, the house's previous owner. The early pages described Arthur's mundane life, a seemingly quiet and solitary existence. But as Emily read deeper, the tone shifted, growing strange and unsettling. Cryptic passages began to appear, bizarre symbols, and hints of a friend inside his mind. Mary, Emily's mother, a true crime writer, possessed a keen interest in criminal narratives. When Emily told her about the journal, Mary's curiosity was piqued. She took a look herself. She quickly realized this was no ordinary diary. The vague entries gradually unveiled disturbing violent tendencies, unprovoked rages, and voices in Arthur's head. One night, as the family slept soundly, Emily jolted awake to a strange noise coming from the basement, creaking floorboards, heavy footsteps, and faint whispers drifted up from downstairs. Emily roused her parents, and together they crept down to the basement. They found nothing amiss, but the cold, damp air sent shivers down their spines. John, Emily's father, a practical and rational man, dismissed it as settling house noises, but Mary and Emily weren't convinced. The next day, while tidying Arthur's old study on the second floor, Mary discovered a secret door cleverly disguised behind a bookshelf. It opened into a small, windowless room, stark and empty except for a lone wooden chair and a small table. Inside the secret room, Mary found another box, smaller than the one in the basement. It held a thick file folder filled with old newspaper clippings, photographs, and handwritten notes. Mary's blood ran cold as she realized these were records of horrific murders that had plagued Silent Creek years ago. The articles detailed mysterious disappearances, dismembered bodies found in the woods, and chilling testimonies from witnesses. Arthur Reeves' name appeared in many articles, initially as a witness, later as a suspect, but never convicted due to lack of evidence. Mary started piecing things together. The journal, the porcelain doll, the strange noises in the night, and the case files, all pointing back to Arthur Reeves and a horrifying secret. She suspected Arthur Reeves wasn't just a recluse. He might be a man with multiple personalities, a cold-blooded serial killer. Emily, while rummaging through the wooden box again in the basement, unearthed an old cassette tape recorder. She brought it to her room and plugged it into her vintage boombox. Pressing play, a raspy, distorted voice filled the room, muttering unintelligible words before abruptly shifting into maniacal laughter and pained whimpers. The voice on the tape made Emily's hair stand on end. She recognized it as Arthur Reeves, but it sounded nothing like the journal entries. This voice was cold, cruel, and menacing. Emily believed it was the voice of the friend Arthur mentioned in his diary. Another personality lurking within him, a vicious and bloodthirsty one. When Mary and Emily shared their findings with John, His skepticism remained, but a flicker of unease began to show in his eyes. That evening, as the family sat down for dinner, the lights in the house suddenly flickered and died. Darkness descended, and a loud creaking echoed from the basement. This time, not footsteps, but the sound of something heavy being dragged across the floor. John grabbed a flashlight and headed down to the basement to investigate. Mary and Emily waited anxiously at the top of the stairs, hearts pounding. Minutes later, John returned, pale and shaken, his hand trembling. He said nothing, just silently handed Mary something he'd found downstairs. It was a gleaming surgical scalpel, its blade stained with dried blood. Mary almost collapsed at the sight of the knife. Her suspicions were no longer unfounded. Arthur Reeves wasn't just a disturbed man. He was a depraved killer, and the evidence of his crimes was still hidden within this house. That night, rain lashed against the windows. Wind howled through the eaves. The Harrison family couldn't sleep. They heard strange sounds emanating from every corner of the house. Creaking floorboards, whispers in the shadows, objects falling and breaking, and heavy footsteps pacing ceaselessly from the basement to the upper floors. Emily couldn't take it anymore. She needed to know more about Arthur Reeves' past. She went online, searching for information about the Silent Creek murders. She found archived case files, online forums discussing the unsolved mysteries, and posts from people who'd lived in Silent Creek back then. In an online forum, Emily found a post from someone claiming to be Arthur Reeves' former neighbor. This person described Arthur as odd and secretive, always reclusive and uncommunicative. He also revealed a chilling detail. Arthur had worked at a local psychiatric hospital. This information sent a chill down Emily's spine. Arthur Reeves worked at a mental hospital. He possessed knowledge of psychology, of mental illness, and could have used that knowledge to conceal his crimes. Suddenly, Emily's computer screen flickered and went black. The room plunged into darkness. A cold, dry chuckle echoed from behind her. A familiar laugh she recognized from the cassette tape. Emily whipped around, heart racing. She saw nothing, but felt a presence behind her, watching from the shadows. She frantically switched on the desk lamp, but the laughter was gone. The next morning, while Mary cleaned the kitchen, she discovered a strange message written in blood on the countertop. The writing was shaky, barely legible, but Mary recognized it as Latin. After translating, she recoiled in horror. The phrase read, "I know you're here." Fear reached its peak. The Harrison family no longer doubted it. They were being watched, haunted by the spirit or the malevolent personality of Arthur Reeves. They decided they had to uncover the full truth about the house, past, and the crimes Arthur had committed. Mary visited the local library and delved into the old newspaper archives. She found more detailed articles about the Silent Creek murders, including names and photos of the victims. She was horrified to realize the victims were all young women. All disappeared on weekends, their bodies later found in the woods. Mary understood Arthur Reeves' meticulous planning. He targeted vulnerable women, lured them to this house on weekends, then imprisoned and tortured them in the basement, before killing them and disposing of their bodies in the woods. While Mary researched at the library, John and Emily decided to reinvestigate the basement. Armed with flashlights and digging tools, they hoped to find more evidence of Arthur's crimes. As they dug deeper into the damp basement floor, their shovels struck something hard. John and Emily dug more carefully and unearthed a large metal barrel buried beneath the basement floor. The barrel was secured with a rusty padlock. John used a hammer to break the lock, and upon wrenching the lid open, a putrid stench assaulted their nostrils. Inside the barrel were human remains, mostly decomposed skeletons, mingled with tattered women's clothing and personal items. John and Emily stared in terror, realizing they'd found the mass grave of Arthur Reeves' victims. As John and Emily reeled from their horrific discovery, they heard creaking stairs from above. Mary had returned, and she too gasped in horror. at the sight of the barrel and the skeletal remains. All three felt a cold dread creep over them, realizing they were not alone in this house. A shadowy figure materialized at the top of the basement stairs, tall, distorted, and emitting a chilling chuckle. A raspy voice echoed from the darkness. "Welcome to my home." The Harrison family realized with sickening certainty they were facing not just the past crimes of Arthur Reeves, but a malevolent force that had infested this house. Perhaps Arthur's dark personality, or some demonic entity, had been awakened by the unspeakable horrors that had occurred here. The shadowy figure lunged down the stairs, impossibly fast. John shoved Mary and Emily behind him, facing the darkness with his flashlight raised. The beam caught the figure, revealing a grotesque shape. A towering humanoid, pallid skin stretched taut, red eyes burning, and a gaping maw filled with razor-sharp teeth. The figure attacked John, throwing him to the ground. Mary and Emily screamed. Mary grabbed a nearby shovel and charged at the creature. Emily, trembling, held the flashlight beam steady on the monster's face. The flashlight's light seemed to affect the creature. It hissed in pain and recoiled back into the shadows. But before vanishing completely, it snatched Emily's leg, dragging her down into the basement depths. Emily shrieked in terror as she was pulled into the abyss. Mary and John rushed after Emily into the basement, but the creature and Emily were gone. All that remained was the shattered flashlight and echoing laughter from the darkness. The Harrison family vanished without a trace. The house in Silent Creek still stands, silent and somber, guarding its horrifying secrets of past sins and the malevolent spirits that linger still. They say on moonless nights, if you stand before the Harrison house and listen closely, you can hear the whispers of imprisoned souls and the maniacal laughter of the killer who still haunts its halls. And sometimes, people swear they see a flickering light in the basement windows and shadowy figures gliding past the panes, a chilling reminder that this house never truly belongs to anyone, forever a domain of darkness and sin. Dr. Emily Carter had spent years treating patients with dissociative identity disorder, but nothing prepared her for the chilling reality hidden behind the eyes of her newest patient, Andrew Wallace. It all began when the small town of Pine Ridge was gripped by fear. 5 young women had mysteriously vanished over the past 3 months, leaving behind only cryptic notes and scattered belongings. Detective Alex Reed, desperate for leads, requested Dr. Carter's help profiling a prime suspect. Andrew Wallace, a quiet librarian with unsettling memory gaps. The first session sent a chill down Emily's spine. Andrew sat stiffly, hands clenched, his face pale and drawn. "I swear, Doctor, I have no idea where I've been. I wake up in strange places, covered in dirt, or worse." Emily jotted down notes carefully. "When did this begin, Andrew?" He shook his head, frustrated. "A few months ago, after the headache started." A sudden change rippled through him. Andrew's face shifted, eyes sharpening, voice dropping to a cold whisper. A slow smile spread across his lips. "Andrew isn't strong enough to handle the truth, Doctor," he sneered. "You can call me Leo." Emily's pen froze midair. "Leo?" "Yes," Leo smiled, eyes darkening. "I'm the one who remembers everything Andrew forgets." Emily felt unease pooling in her chest. "And what exactly do you remember, Leo?" He leaned forward, his eyes boring into hers. "I remember screams, blood, bleeding, the smell of earth freshly turned." "Shall I continue?" "The smell of earth freshly turned. Shall I continue?" Outside, rain tapped steadily against the window pane, intensifying the suffocating tension inside. She quickly contacted Detective Reed after the session, playing the recording. Reed's face turned grim. "He just described details we never released," Reed murmured. "Keep him talking." In their following sessions, Leo described each disappearance vividly, savoring every haunting detail. Emily noticed Andrew growing increasingly anxious, frightened, losing weight, and visibly deteriorating as Leo took dominance. But despite Leo's confessions, something nagged at Emily. How could Andrew function daily if Leo was always in control during the crimes? One night, after another chilling session, Emily received a call. A distorted voice whispered through static. "You're playing with fire, Dr. Carter. Be careful." Fear tightened her throat. She hung up, heart racing. Later that night, her home security system beeped. Motion detected outside her back door. She stared at the grainy camera feed, horrified to see a masked figure standing silently in the dark, looking directly into the camera, waving slowly before disappearing into shadows. Emily rushed to the police station. Reed promised increased patrols, but the unsettling feeling remained. Each day, paranoia crept deeper. Shadows seemed darker, footsteps louder. At their next session, Andrew trembled violently. "Leah, he's planning something terrible," he said. "You're next." Emily's blood turned to ice. She quickly excused herself and contacted Detective Reed, requesting immediate protection. That night, Emily's phone buzzed repeatedly. Unknown number, sending photos. Images of her office, her home, even her sleeping in bed. The final text read, "Tonight." Panic surged through her veins. She grabbed her phone to dial Reed, but the line was dead, replaced by hollow static. Then from downstairs came the faint creak of floorboards, heart pounding. She silently locked her bedroom door, listening as the intruder slowly ascended the stairs, the sound of his heavy boots echoing ominously. Emily, a voice whispered gently outside her door, chillingly familiar. "Don't you want to meet Leo in person?" She heard scraping at the lock. Quickly grabbing a heavy lamp, she braced herself. The door burst open violently. Andrew, no, Leo, stood framed in the doorway, eyes gleaming with malice, a wicked blade glinting in his hand. Emily swung the lamp wildly, connecting solidly. Leo staggered. Stunned, she fled past him, sprinting down the stairs, towards the front door, only to see Detective Reed arriving outside, weapon drawn. "Get down!" Reed yelled, rushing forward. Leo emerged, blood trickling from his temple, snarling as Reed tackled him. A brutal struggle ensued, culminating in Leo's wrists cuffed. Days later, the investigation revealed a chilling truth. Andrew's psychological condition had been deliberately exploited by another, someone feeding him hallucinogenic substances, orchestrating his blackouts, and planting false memories. Surveillance footage from the library confirmed Andrew's alibi for each disappearance. Emily and Reed pored over evidence, piecing together a horrifying realization. Someone else had meticulously framed Andrew, manipulating him psychologically and terrorizing Emily. Weeks passed. The true suspect remained elusive until, late one night, Emily found an envelope slipped under her office door. Inside, photographs, each victim's final moments, captured in chilling detail, and a Polaroid of herself sleeping, taken mere days ago. A note read, "We're not finished yet." Emily's stomach lurched. She immediately dialed Reed, but no response came, only the familiar sickening static. Panicked, she rushed to the precinct, only to find it eerily empty. The lights flickered erratically, casting haunting shadows on walls covered in chilling messages scrawled hastily in red paint. "It was always you, Emily. He's waiting in the dark." Her breathing quickened. Behind her, a familiar voice softly spoke. "You've been looking in the wrong direction, Doctor." She spun around, standing calmly with a vacant expression. Was Detective Reed? "It was surprisingly easy," he murmured, stepping closer. "Poor Andrew never suspected. He trusted you completely, just as you trusted me." Emily recoiled in shock. "Why?" Reed smiled gently, eyes utterly devoid of warmth. "Because suffering is fascinating, Doctor. I wanted to see how far you'd push before breaking." A door creaked open behind him. Emily's stomach turned as Andrew stepped out slowly, dazed, eyes vacant from heavy sedation. "Now," Reed whispered softly, placing a gun into Andrew's trembling hand. "One final choice, Doctor. You kill him, or he kills you. Andrew's eyes widened in terror, shaking his head desperately. No, please. Emily hesitated, eyes filling with tears. Reed watched, eyes gleaming expectantly. I won't play your game, she whispered, standing firm. Reed sighed, disappointed, and drew his weapon, aiming slowly at Emily. Andrew lunged desperately at Reed, both crashing violently to the floor. A shot rang out, echoing sharply in the empty precinct. Silence. Emily stared, horrified, as Andrew collapsed, blood seeping rapidly from his chest. Reed stood, wiping blood from his cheek, grinning coldly. You've ruined everything. Emily fled outside, screaming desperately for help, as sirens finally wailed nearby. Officers flooded the building, capturing Reed moments later. Andrew was rushed to the hospital, clinging desperately to life. Months passed, the trauma lingering. Reed confessed coldly, his true victim count higher than anyone suspected. Andrew survived, scarred yet grateful, finally freed from psychological torment. Yet, even as Reed was sentenced, Emily's nightmares persisted. Late at night, shadows whispered darkly. She'd wake, terrified, imagining Reed's emotionless eyes watching her from the darkness. One evening, returning home, she found a single note tucked under her doormat. This isn't over. I'm always watching. Inside, a Polaroid photo showed her standing alone in her office, taken just hours earlier. Outside, a quiet laugh echoed briefly in the darkness, before fading into silence, leaving Emily frozen in fear, wondering who else might be watching from the shadows, and if perhaps Reed hadn't acted entirely alone. In the Blue Ridge Mountains, where the trails twist like serpent bones and cell signals die screaming, there's a ranger named Elias Cole. He's known for his crooked grin, his knack for finding lost hikers, and the hand-stitched journal he carries. Pages crammed with sketches of wildflowers and notes like Sarah, 24, last seen near Bear Creek, or Tomas, red backpack, vanished 1013. The townsfolk call him a hero. They don't know about the other Elias, the one who writes in blood. The first time the group saw him, he was kneeling by the trail, bandaging a stray dog's paw. Poor thing got caught in a trap, Elias said, his voice soft as creek water. He wore a ranger's uniform, but the patches were sewn on crooked, and his boots didn't match. One leather, one rubber. Storms rolling in, he warned. My cabin's just past the ridge. Jess hesitated. Her brother, Liam, had vanished on this trail 2 years ago, but the dog licked her hand, and Elias's eyes crinkled with a warmth that made her chest ache. Lead the way, she said. The cabin felt off. Taxidermy crows lined the shelves, their glass eyes tracking the group. A faded quilt lay crumpled on the couch, stained with something rusty. Make yourselves at home, Elias said, stoking the fire. His left hand trembled violently until he noticed Jess watching. He shoved it into his pocket. That's when Noah found the basement door. It was hidden behind a moth-eaten tapestry, the lock gouged with deep scratches. Storage, Elias said sharply, blocking the stairs. But as he turned, the firelight caught his face, and for a heartbeat, his expression shifted, pupils dilating to black pits, lips peeling back from yellow teeth. Jess blinked, and it was gone. Midnight. The storm howled. Jess woke to the sound of whistling, not Elias' gentle hum. This was shrill, erratic, like a tea kettle screaming. She followed it to the basement door, now ajar. Theirs groaned under her weight, the air reeking of wet earth and copper. The walls were papered with missing posters. Hundreds. Liam's face stared back at her, his photo circled in red. Beneath it, a child's handwriting. I didn't mean to. I didn't. A hand clamped over her mouth. Shh. Elias breathed, his voice cracked and guttural. His trembling hand now held a knife, its blade notched like a saw. "Hell, I hear you." They ran. The forest swallowed their screams, branches clawing at their clothes. Behind them, Elias's voice echoed. Two voices, overlapping. One pleading, "Stop, please, I can't control him," the other snarling, "You left the door open, idiot. Now we have to clean up." Noah tripped. By the time Jess turned, he was gone. Only his flashlight remained, rolling across the leaves, its beam catching a figure in the trees. Not Elias, something wearing Elias. Jaw unhinged like a snake's, fingers elongated into bone-white hooks. "Jess," it hissed, her brother's wedding ring glinting on its pinky. "Liam said you'd come." Jess stumbled into a clearing littered with shallow graves. One held Liam's camera. The last video showed Elias. No, the other Elias, coaxing Liam off the trail. "I'll show you a shortcut," he said kindly. Then the screen flickered. The same face, but eyes dead and hungry, whispered, "I'll show you where I put your sister." The journal told the rest. Page after page of Elias begging his other half to stop, followed by meticulous logs of victims, dates, methods. "Drowning feels like singing," one entry mused. "Bones are easier to burn if you snap them first." Jess cornered Elias at Dead Man's Bluff. He clutched his head, sobbing. "I tried to lock him out," he whimpered, thrusting the knife into her hand. "Do it." Before he wakes up, his pupils flickered. Brown, then black, brown, then black. She plunged the knife into his chest. The scream that tore from his throat wasn't human. It was two voices, unraveling, one fading into a whimper, the other laughing as Elias collapsed. "You think this ends it?" the other rasped. "I'll always find a way back." Yes, moved to a desert town, where the horizon stretches empty and the nights are silent. But last week, she found a crow on her porch, taxidermied, glass eyes gleaming. Around its leg, a scrap of paper in child's handwriting. "I didn't mean to." And deep in the Blue Ridge Mountains, a new ranger patrols the trails. He wears mismatched boots, hums folk songs, and offers hikers a crooked grin. When asked his name, he pauses, as if listening to something in the wind. "Ely," he says finally, short for Elias. Some say his left hand never stops trembling.